My brothers and sisters, our reading today is taken from the Good News as recorded by Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples, "When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit upon his glorious throne and all the nations will be assembled before him. He will separate them one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will place the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed by the Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food, thirsty, and you gave me drink, a stranger, and you welcomed me, naked, and you clothed me. I was ill, and you cared for me, in prison, and you visited me.' The righteous will answer him and say, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you ill or in prison and visit you?' The king will say to them in reply, 'I say to you, whatever you did for the least of my brothers or sisters, you did to me.' Then he will say to those on his left, 'Depart from me, you accursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the angels and his devils. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food, thirsty, and you chose to give me no drink. I was a stranger, and you made me no welcome, naked, and you gave me no clothing, ill and in prison, and you did not choose to care for me.' Then they will answer, and they will say, 'Lord, when did we possibly see you hungry or thirsty, stranger, naked, ill, or in prison? And when did we not minister to you in your needs?' He will answer them, 'I say to you, when you did not do it for one of these least ones, you did not do it for me.' And these will go off to eternal punishment, but the righteous to everlasting life." The gospel of Christ. Praise be to Christ. Please be seated. So I know Corey is in earshot, and Steve and Tom are here. Thank you so much for putting up the stable. Hopefully we won't have any visits from the housing department, to come and do a site inspection. Seems a little wobbly, Corey, on the left, but it's okay. So I was watching this movie the other day, and Nicolas Cage, I dragged Arthur into it. He got stuck. The interesting thing about the movie was it was all about buffalo. It was about a time and place where they were killing and trying to get buffalo skins. And so Nicolas Cage goes, and the weird thing is, Arthur, 80% of the movie is all buffalo. 80% of the movie. Yet when they go to show who the leading actors are, not one single buffalo is named in the lineup, okay? It starts with Nicolas Cage and nobody else. And I really felt bad for the buffalo because they're the ones that were 80% of the show. Anyway, the ending of the story turns out that when Nicolas Cage finally gets all of these buffalo fur and skins back, the problem is that now buffalo fur and skin is not popular. Nobody wants them. So now what they were promised $4 a hide, now you can't even get rid of them because the fashion changed. So no one wants them. I spent the last couple of days learning about sheep and goats. And whether or not you like it, you are going to learn about sheep and goats. Okay, so you should know, first of all, in Jesus' day, sheep and goats were actually all in the same herd. I didn't know that. I thought the two never got along. The truth of the matter is that in Jesus' day, and I think even to today, sheep and goats are together. They're actually all herded together, which means that somewhere in the midst of all this, I'm sure some sheep became very friendly with some goats. Some goats became very friendly with some sheep, right? They're bumping up against each other. They're talking to each other. All right. Yes, I think animals talk to each other. But the fact of the matter is, here they are doing what they're doing. And then in this story, there is this separation of the two. And I always felt bad about that thought of the separation. See, because the goats didn't realize they were goats. And the sheep never realized they were sheep. They were just all one herd. The two animals are the same, herded together, fed together, taken, pastured, the whole thing. They're all cared for equally. However, then they all have three very similar traits. They're all used for their meat, their milk, and their skin. Both sheep and goats are used for eating. They're used for their skin. That's where parchment came from, was actually the stretching of the skin. I actually have a Torah in the house that the entire Torah is made of sheepskin that has been stretched and written upon. And actually, the sinew of the sheep is what the muscle of the sheep. Sorry, I am just such a master now of all of this terminology. I forgot to tell you that sinew is actually the muscle of the sheep. The muscle of the sheep is actually what sews together the pages of the Torah. So in all of these things, their milk and their skin and their meat was all incredibly equally used, very popular during the time. However, sheep were more popular than goats. Can anyone tell me why? The wool. The wool. So sheep were more popular because sheep kept producing wool. So you would cut the wool, right, and they would turn it into clothing and the like, tunics and jackets or whatever they needed during the time. It was very popular during the time. And sheep were generally kept longer than goats because of the fact that they can continue to produce the end result, which was the wool. That's why they were so incredibly valuable in the midst of all this. What I always thought was interesting is, according to Jesus' story here about the separation at the end times. Now, the end times, just for the record, this could mean when Jesus comes at the end of all ages and comes and this world becomes that heaven and everything here is just and generous and compassionate and loving because God has taken over the world and we will follow directly his guidance. Right now, because of free will, we have a bit of the mess that we have. God's gift of free will leaves it to us to choose whether or not we want to be a goat or whether or not we want to be a sheep. Free will does that for us. And that is because God doesn't want slaves. He doesn't want servants. He wants friends. And so because of that, we are gifted with free will, and free will can do amazingly, incredibly beautiful things, and it can do some pretty treacherous and notorious things as well. God bless you. Now, a good cover up there, too. That was great. The whole face thing, that was amazing. So the fact of the matter is, that because of free will, we have this. But notice how at the end, Jesus starts talking about how you would be separated. And it all comes down to a very specific word that is used, and it is you. It's not the group. It's not the church. You gave me food. You gave me drink. You welcomed me. You clothed me. You cared for me. You visited me. And I have to be honest, I had a qualm of conscience this week because I was wondering, is it just enough, and I'm just throwing this out here, I don't have an answer, is it enough simply to donate to an organization that feeds and welcomes and clothes and cares or takes care of the ill? Because according to Jesus' words, the you is very specific. It's pointing to us. It's telling us that we are supposed to be doing this. Notice, if you will, and this is where I'm going to get in a lot of trouble this week, I know it. There's nowhere in here where Jesus says, you prayed. It doesn't say anything in here about you went to church. It doesn't say anything about in here that you read the scriptures. None of that is in this lineup. Everything about what makes us sheep over being a goat is the fact that we are actually caring for one another. And I know that is a little startling because we always see ourselves, well, today I took a whole 20 minutes for Jesus. Aren't I just great? Aren't I just wonderful? I got a whole 20 minutes in. Usually he only gets 4 minutes. Today he got 20. Isn't that wonderful? I found myself praying. Isn't that great? Or the ones that I love is, well, I go to church on Sunday. It interests me that a lot of what we think as Christians makes us Christians, which would be believers, which would be followers of Jesus, has absolutely, according to Jesus, nothing to do with what we think, it really, what Jesus would think it means. And that's a little startling to me. Because I think, well, I'm a pastor. Like, okay, I think I'm a sheep. But what if I'm a goat? And is it possible that goats only know they're goats because the sheep tell them that they're goats? I know this is really heavy. I told you I spent a whole week talking and thinking and reading about sheep and goats. So you're getting hit with it because I didn't do all this studying for nothing. All right? So this is it. But I wonder, are you a sheep? Or are you a goat? My brother-in-law works for a soup kitchen down in New York. And on Thanksgiving Day, he is very busy. He gets there I think he gets there almost every day, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to prep the food. And on Thanksgiving, he said that they fed more people than they ever fed before. New York is what it is now with all the, the immigrants being shipped up here and the people finding their way here and on. Look, whatever our political stance about that, we have to, as Christians, put that all aside. The bottom line is the fact that they're already here. So being the fact that they are here, trying to address that issue is something that we as a country have to vote on and try and figure out, or to support laws that currently are in place to try to get this process a little bit easier. The problem is, above and all of that, is the fact that they're already here. They're already here. They're already the hungry, the thirsty, the naked. They're already here as the hungry, the thirsty, the naked, the unwelcomed. We have a responsibility. My brother-in-law, however, he comes home, he comes to our house after Thanksgiving, after working on Thanksgiving, comes to our house for Thanksgiving dinner, and he never says anything. He doesn't come in and he doesn't say, wow, man, today was such a bear. You should have seen all of these people. Oh my God, it was exhausting. It was terrible. He never says anything. He didn't say a word. We actually had to ask him, did you see more people this year than last year? Because of everything that's happening in New York. Did you see more people? And he goes, yeah. Well, Louis, you want to give us a little bit more than just, give us a little bit more. And he's like, yeah, there were like 300 downstairs, 200 upstairs. It was more than we've ever done. He said, yeah. But he doesn't complain about it. And he never talks negatively about the experience. And I'm wondering somewhere if on Thursday, Louis was one of the luckiest people in the world. Because according to this, Louis was surrounded by people who were Jesus. They were hungry and they were thirsty, and he fed them. And I was thinking on Thanksgiving, like, man, if I had to feed 500 people and cut up 30 or 40 birds, he said, I'm not coming home in a good mood, and I'm definitely not having turkey with the family, not after all that. But I wonder whether or not Louis actually was the most blessed, graced person on that day, because according to this, Jesus hangs out in places that you and I, if we think we're going to go and we want to spend time with God, where would we go? We'll come to a church, right? You would think that. I do it all the time. Stop into a church, sit, hang out. But according to Jesus, he's not there. I mean, he's there, but he's really in the people who are hungry, who are thirsty, who are a stranger, who are naked, who need clothing, who are ill and need to be cared for. And I'm still stuck on that word, you. You gave me food. You gave me drink. You gave me clothing. You did that. You. Not a check, not a credit card donation. You did that. There's also three things in this that I find very appropriate to us today, in today's day and age, but obviously, clearly, a part of a problem and a situation and an attitude that existed in Jesus' day. Have you ever taken care of a person who is sick? Do you know how much attention it takes to provide care for a person who is sick? Attention. Constant, agonizing, grueling, frustrating attention. Attention. Because you have to provide for every aspect of what they need because they're sick. You and I, we are really short on attention nowadays. To give our attention to somebody, if there's a choice of sitting in a room, I caught myself last night. We were watching TV, and we were watching TV. We were together watching TV, but I was paying attention to the TV show and not paying attention to Donna. And not that there's anything wrong with watching TV, please, okay? Save yourself the email. The point of the matter really is that, do we really pay attention to each other? And isn't it interesting that Jesus states here that this is one of the things, giving our attention to someone who needs it. The other thing I found interesting here is visiting those in prison. Really? On my schedule? With my time? With my calendar? With what I have prioritized in my life? To visit someone? Especially, look, we have a hard enough time visiting our friends. Who wants to go visit someone who's been placed in prison? Like, in our mind, the level of criteria of people receiving my attention and my time is pretty high up here, and most of the time it has to do with how it makes me feel. And yet here in this reality, Jesus is saying that we should visit those. Visit those means take time out of my day to go and visit someone who is in a prison. Now listen, just for the record, TV show that we want to see, right? And so that's going to take our time, and our attention. That's what we're going to give ourselves to because it satisfies us. And yet at the reality here, Jesus is saying, no, that's not the way it's supposed to work. And not only are you supposed to be giving up your time, but you're supposed to be giving it to people who you normally would not want to associate in the first place. Wow. And we do this a lot. I honestly say that, when people ask me all the time, I feel this desire, I want to do this, I'm going to, and I'm going to sell and I'm going to put the money, and I'm like, time out. I assure you, within 6 degrees of separation from where you are right now, in your own relationships, there are people that you can be touching, feeding, providing for, caring for. They exist. They're very real. They're very real. Don and I came across a very dear friend couple of ours that we had no idea until they shared with us they were having, issues. I didn't know. I didn't know they were having financial issues. But now that I know, don't I have a responsibility? According to Jesus, yes, absolutely. According to Jesus, absolutely. So I don't think it's these big grandiose things. You don't have to go down and figure out that you're going to go serve the poor and you're going to sign up for soup kitchens every other day. And no, I'm simply stating there are enough hungry people around you, and hunger doesn't necessarily have to do with food. There are plenty of people who are thirsty for relationships, for friendships, for love, for someone to just ask how they're doing, just to look in on them. Simple things. There are plenty of people right within our 6 degrees of separation, whatever that means. I have no idea. I saw it on TikTok. Anyway, that's 6 degrees of separation, whatever that is. All right? Whatever those people are, I assure you they're already there. Do you know I have an entire ministry of just texting? I have hundreds of texts from people who have written or whatever. I have to be honest, most of them get a duplicate of what the other person got. I can't type all that. My thumbs and fingers are too big, okay? They don't fit on the phone. However, I have created an entire ministry of just reaching out and saying hi. Hey, how you doing? You were on my mind. How's everything going? And people respond. People respond, and then you end up into this whole conversation. Ask Donna, I'll sit there. She's like, what are you doing? Okay. Cut, paste, cut, paste, cut, paste, cut, paste, go, right? But something as simple as that is reaching out and touching people. It's actually so much easier now for us with our technology to be in touch with one another. And yet we overlook that opportunity. The last point, and then I'll let you go. And there is a test on sheep and goats after this, all right? Just so you know. Sheep don't have to think about the value that they are and desire for themselves to produce more wool. Sheep are sheep. They just naturally produce wool because that's what they are. Believers are believers. We naturally should be producing what it is that Jesus has asked us to produce. It shouldn't be work for us to do this. It should be natural to us to do this. The sheep doesn't sit there and say, I'm going to concentrate, I'm going to grow more wool. It doesn't really work like that. The sheep's the sheep. The sheep's going to produce wool no matter what. And when they shave that off, guess what? It's going to grow back. Because that's what they are. It's natural. It is a natural inclination to who and what they are. In the very same way, our caring for one another should just be a natural inclination to who and what we are as followers of Jesus Christ. God bless you.